Welcome to Art, Nature, Science on the Binna Burra Cultural Landscape, the podcast that tells the story of the mountain's natural wonder through art making and exploring the creative spirit, and celebrates the history and heritage of this magnificent World Heritage Area. My name is Michelle Walker and I'm joined today by Suzanne Noakes. Suzanne's an adventurer by heart and has been contributing and or leading expeditions to the most interesting of places as diverse as Mongolia, Morocco, the Arctic regions of Norway and Finland, and Antarctica. Moving to Beechmont, southeast Queensland with her young family a quarter of a century ago, Suzanne joined the Lamington Natural History Association, eager to learn more about the natural surroundings of this unique destination. She's an active member of the management committee for the LNHA and holds the position of vice president. She's joined the Beechmont Rural Fire Brigade and is still an active firefighter and administration officer for the Bedesert Rural Fire Brigade Group. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you, Michelle.
It's great to speak to you. And I can see you wear many hats in connection with Binna Burra and Lamington National Park. I know some of the story of you being part of the local rural fire service at Beechmont, which were active during those times in September back in 2019. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience of fighting the fires?
Yeah, it was, it seems like yesterday, but seems so long ago, I suppose, only because so much has sort of happened in between. So pretty much coming up to the fires of 2019, the fire brigade had already been on the fire field. We'd been doing some hazard reduction burns with Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service just in the local area. And so that was sort of our part getting ready for the season. We already knew it was going to be a challenging season. You know, we had our temperatures were hot, the humidity was really low. We'd already come off the back of, a whole heap of drought. The grass was crunching under our feet each time we sort of went out into the fields. So we had already been aware that, this was going to be a challenging season. I don't think anyone expected it to be so overpowering, though. So pretty much on those early days coming into where the fire had actually started to jump a number of the mountains behind us and coming towards Beechmont, I'd already been deployed over to Sarabah and into Binna and then sort of back into incident control. And I think the thing that sticks in my mind the most on those, prior to, that fateful weekend where we lost a number of houses in my own street and then the lodge, is it was just this apocalyptic orange, so it sort of was quite surreal, I suppose. And it was ash sort of falling on the street. And I was on my way to incident control and sort of phoning the second officer who, in her wisdom, pretty much started the evacuation of our two streets. Wow. And had also called ahead to the lodge to basically say, if you haven't got your plan in order, now's the time to get it in order. And the lodge itself was extraordinary in how they managed to evacuate and self-deployed so quickly, and along with casual walkers and campers, and just extraordinary. And so it was sort of like every person was on alert. All the streets and the residents and even the postman was getting people to be very active and sort of saying, look, this is not looking good, So sort of from that moment, it just turned into pretty much a never-ending day-by-day, night-by-night shift, back out on patrol, back down, dampening fires that would come up because of the winds and the strength of the winds. And because we were already evacuated from this area, I'd come back from night shift and would have just a slip of paper on my sign-back-in sheet letting me know which bed I was going to in community at that time, and roll out and start the shift again. And then just sort of connect with, hundreds of people in and out of the fire station, trucks and the QCWA ladies sort of feeding us from, 24/7 clock, I suppose. It was busy, it was frantic, it was building relationships, I suppose, with out-of-towners. So we had New South Wales crews come through, we had people from Canberra, we had people, relieving firefighters all over the place because we were so constantly on the fire field and in and out of different fires. And I think when I sort of sat down and I was on the fire field from the 14th of August, in and out of, shift work, I suppose, and in and out of incident control. And, until, Christmas Eve of 2019.
That's a long time.
Like it was
yeah, wow.
pretty fast and furious.
And intense.
Yeah,
I feel that extended level of intensity of alertness and activity must have been fairly draining. It was also, as a spectator, quite almost shocking that the fires were so intense so early in the season. Like September is a very early time to be having that kind of level of fire, isn't it?
Well, no, it's interesting because our fire season normally is from August through to October. So it's just that we haven't had that level of drought. We hadn't had the level of low humidity, high winds. So there was all those sort of factors that were becoming an alert, for all of the fire brigades within the group. But it wasn't just ours. I think I had read afterwards there were something like 50 fires or some wildfires sort of happening in southeast Queensland all at that sort of similar time. So it wasn't just focused on us. There was also, I'd been called up as far as Cunningham Gap and Merivale, and then on to Esk and Fernvale. And so the realm of, my attention, I spent over a month in Boona in the incident control. I was actively moving around the region, and then for the locals, and even still to this day, the smell of smoke, it intensifies memories. Like people will ring and they'll sort of say, oh, there's some smoke. Are we okay? So that's even a number of years on, there's still that anxiousness within certain, members of community. And all hats off to the QCWA, who really do quite an incredible job of reaching out to people and making sure your neighbour is okay. It's being in the fire brigade, we're on to fighting the next fire. So we keep on moving on to fight the next fire, to help out with the next storm relief, to be there, so I'm not saying that the fire brigade people that there is still some that choke up, and when we talk about the event, they still feel quite emotional about it, but we have actively moving forward and beyond, and it's hard sometimes for community members, particularly if they haven't got any or close relatives or people to assist them with. Those community groups are just essential to make sure that community is resilient enough and have the support and have the reach out, so hats off for those who lend that helping hand.
And it's, as you say, it's not something that's taken care of within a month or 6 months. It is something that can stay with community members for several years. So you're right, those community support systems are so vital. What's been the sort of lasting memory for you from the fires?
What resides with me the most, I suppose, is just those new and lasting friendships of people who literally just rocked on up and went, we're here. We've got a pool. We've got this. We've got a tank. And or, supporting fire brigade members who had not even heard of Beechmont coming and spending hours upon hours, helping our community.
It's so heartwarming. And I know that in that time, there was a lot of challenges, but it is beautiful to see everyone helping each other out with everything that's needed. So tell us, you're wearing the hat of Vice President as well as being an active member of the Lamington Natural History Association. Tell us about your experience at the LNHA and the work that they do. What is it that you think is the great contribution?
The great contribution is just building knowledge on the actual value of not just Lamington National Park. I mean, that's the core of our interest, and that's pretty much what led me to become a member when we first moved to the mountain, over 20 odd years ago. This is my own backyard. I grew up in the country, grew up close to another national park, midway down the Great Dividing Range. So always loved the smell and feel of walking in a national park. And this one in particular, because it has its lineages with Gondwana, and I wanted to know more about it. And so the Lamington Natural History Association, it's all about building knowledge, building interest, coming together, I suppose, with like-minded people, and some of our members is just extraordinary on how they can just move through a landscape. And because sometimes I move too fast through a landscape. And so it's nice just taking the time. Our president, Barry Davies, has taught me a really unique lesson on one of the walks that I particularly love. When I normal pace, it's about an hour and a half. Yeah. When I walk with Barry, it takes me 5 hours to go through this. And every single step is like, opens up a whole new world. And it's like, that was there, you know. And so from moss to little creatures to larvae on the and underneath the leaves, and looking under rocks and looking under leaves and looking into and on bark, and you know, just stopping and being aware of nature. So I suppose LNHA, which we lovingly call it, connects people with nature and gives them the simple tools of how to enjoy it more. Gives them the access to members' weekends, gives them the access to learned fellows, gives them access to other members who have walked through this national park and area for many years, and just to step us through this incredible landscape and national park. You can then apply all of those skills to anywhere else that you sort of wander through, you know, like even for me, when I travel overseas, there'll be still items where I'll go, oh, I know what that is. Or, you know, I've become very fascinated with phasmids, so stick insects at the moment. And so those sort of unique nocturnal insects, and looking under leaves and finding the unique spider, and watching their courtship. So there's those sorts of things has really been an absolute joy for me to be involved with LNHA. And I suppose you seek out more information, you know, like it's, you just want to learn just a little bit more.
You're right, Suzanne. I find it's possible to walk through a landscape and miss so much. And I think what the LNHA can do is help visitors appreciate more of what they're going past, and perhaps what they're looking at or could be looking at if they understood the value of it. So that's a fantastic role that the group plays. So now I've got some fun rapid fire questions. So the idea is I throw a question to you and just don't think, just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. If you had to sum up Binna Burra in one photo, what would it be?
It'd be the walking trails. It'd be up into the Tullawalul, into the Antarctic Beach Tree Circle.
Yeah,
that's
perfect.
where I would go.
What does art, nature, science mean to you?
A collaboration of people in nature with nature.
Beautiful. And is there anything that you're finding inspiring right now, Suzanne?
Oh, just breathing the fresh air. This is going to be a big travel year for me. What I find inspiring is, and I just did it recently, is just stepping onto a walking trail, standing still early morning, listening to the sounds of the forest. It's just extraordinary.
Beautiful. And so lucky that you're not like well organized, that you're so close and you're a local, you can just go and step onto those national park trails. Well done. Thank you so much for your time today,
Perfect.
Suzanne. It's been lovely speaking to you, and I'm so grateful that we've had a chance to have this chat.
It's been my pleasure. I could chat longer.
We could. And now in this episode, I'm joined by Barry Davies. As a naturalist, adventure guide, activities coordinator and host, Barry was the face of Binna Burra Lodge for over 20 years. In 2005, he became a freelance guide specialising in birdwatching in Australia and overseas. He's president of the Lamington Natural History Association and a former director of Binna Burra Lodge. Good morning, Barry.
Good morning, Michelle.
Thank you for joining us on the podcast. I'm looking forward to having a chat to you. Would you share briefly about the Lamington Natural History Association and its history and role at Binna Burra?
Yes, the LNHA was formed in 1975 by Tony Groom and others who were around Binna Burra at the time Tony, in episode 8 of the podcast series, explained about his trip to America on a Churchill Fellowship. And as a result of that, there were a lot of initiatives that he saw in the US national parks that he thought would be appropriate here. And one of those was the Natural History Associations that many of their national parks have. And so he was instrumental in starting the organisation back nearly 50 years ago now. So we're coming up in 2025 for our 50th anniversary.
Yeah, we'll be celebrating. So what's its role today?
The objectives are the same as they were then, which is principal one really was to encourage an understanding and appreciation of the national park values to association members and also, importantly, to visitors to Lamington National Park. So that hasn't changed. How we do it has possibly changed because in those days, their principal means of doing that was through the Environmental Education Centre that they set up, based at what's now Groom's Cottage, and it was Tony's original home, because his father was one of the founders of Binna Burra.
Yeah.
The Environmental Studies Centre was aimed at school groups, so principally primary school groups. They would come up for a series of activities over the course of a week designed to introduce them to the forest, introduce them to kind of the magic and the wonder of the rainforest. It was very, very successful for a long time, and it was run by the LNHA and had a series of teachers over the years, wonderful, wonderful instructors, including the first one, Murray Browning, and it was just a great success, and there was nothing else around at that time like that. But over time, more schools started to start up their own, and other organisations started. But those years the LNHA operated it introduced hundreds, probably thousands of children to the rainforest. And the flow-on effect for that is fantastic, because you think about, they go home and they have, they talk to their family and their friends, and it was just inspiring stuff.
It was, and having been a kid in those days, it was very uplifting, and it certainly gave a sense of the magic of the forest and the park. So what's the role now? What's the primary role for LNHA in terms of how it communicates the values and conservation understanding to visitors?
When the National Parks built the Visitor Centre, and they operated it during the week, but on the weekends, they asked the LNHA to take over the operation, weekends and school holidays. And we've been doing that now ever since, and it's been a long time, and very successfully. So that has become the principal focus. So we've sort of got away from doing some of the things that we did in the early days, that sort of direct interpretation with the visitors that I know that you were involved with and a beneficiary of. So one of our objectives is to get back to doing that again, if we can. And we want to be able to provide walks and storytelling, all of those things that we used to do in the past. And so that's one of our key objectives. And so that will be a focus of a lot of what we do over the next few years.
Okay, so I want to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions now, Barry. And you just don't think, just tell me the first thing that comes to mind. If you had to sum up Binna Burra in one photo, what would it be?
I guess now I'm a grandfather. I think all of the children sitting in the lounge at Christmas, on Christmas Eve around Santa, somehow that, when all the people around and all the kids just sitting around Santa and things. For some reason, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, but it is the next generation, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah,
and I'm looking forward to when the lodge is there again. Yep. And maybe the beard might get grown again.
You might get roped in.
It's highly likely, and it wouldn't be the first time. But I'm really looking forward to having my grandchildren there on Christmas Eve, getting a little present from Santa and singing a few carols, and because it was always such fun, and it was one of the biggest challenges of the year for me as the activities coordinator, is how was Santa going to arrive? Yeah, it was. I mean, one year he arrived in a helicopter. I mean, that was
Wow, that's a bit special.
It was, yeah, and it was kind of a reward for Santa. Worked hard over the years, so.
It wasn't you. Okay.
No, yeah, was he going to come out of a tree or land on the roof of the back of a ute, a Rolls Royce, a horse-drawn
hitchhike his way up from the cave circuit.
Yeah, motorbike. I don't know. It was just,
So this is a future photo, I can hear. A future photo in a couple of years. Fantastic. What does art, nature, science mean to you?
Well, art, nature, science. I mean, it's sort of the sum of everything, really. When you look at somewhere like Lamington, a national park, that sort of forest, and even the way Binna Burra there was a focus on art over the years, with all the workshops and things we had. But I mean, really, it's the sum of everything. Think about as you're walking along. I mean, this time of the year, and there'll be fungi out and things like that. And you look at them, and you look at design. You look at the artistry and in the shapes and forms. And,
the colour palettes. Mother Nature is an incredible artist. I got to do a quick walk really early in the morning before I ran the last workshop in October last year, and I did my favourite short walk, which is up to Talawalal. And it was 5 o'clock in the morning. It was raining, and I had the national park to myself. So I took, 50, 60 photos, and just the forms and the dripping of the rain on the foliage and the colour of the fungi was amazing, because it was October. It was warm enough for that to come through. So
which reminds me about all those beautiful scenes that I've had the good fortune to see over the years. I mean, I've been out there in every weather, and one of my favourite scenes is when you're coming down on the loop track back from Talawalal on the western side there.
Yep.
In an afternoon, usually in summer when it can get a bit misty, and you've got the shafts of light coming down through the trees. I mean, so I always tell people that if you're doing that, the Talawalal circuit, you go out on the border track and you come back on the loop track on the western side, because the opportunity is there to see what is, I think, one of the great spectacles in the park.
Yeah.
And the same thing when you're out, in the higher altitude, and you've got all that phytic mosses hanging down from the trees, and the light striking those on a misty day is it's kind of beyond special, really.
It is. And I just think about all that incredible knowledge inside your head there, Barry, in terms of all those years. If we could download that camera app into something, wouldn't it be magnificent?
Yeah, I wish.
What a fantastic thing to hearing your story and hearing about your experience connected to Binna Burra and to Lamington Natural History Association. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the new Binna Burra. When that's finished. I know it's not going to be the same. It can't be. I mean, physically it can't be the same, and which is probably a good thing, because having something purpose-built will be very special. And I'm just really, really hope that the will is there to recreate the atmosphere that was there.
And the community, definitely.
And that sense of community, definitely.
The warmth.
Yeah, that was so special.
Yeah.
And I'm very looking forward to contributing to that as whatever way I can. And so I guess that's my final word.
Fantastic. Well, let's give a plug to the LNHA so people can get involved. They can jump on your website.
Yes, they can, which is lnha.org.au. And you can join, as well as we have 4 members weekends a year, and on those weekends are really good fun. And we have a guest speaker on Saturday morning. This year we're focusing on research in the park, getting researchers to come and talk with a view to us getting more involved in iNaturalists and those other, data information, recording programs. And then we have a walk in the afternoon, and then a bit of fun at night time. We have, like board games specifically designed around the theme of the weekend, and a dinner. And those that stay around for the Sunday morning can really get involved in weeding in the park if they want, or a walk.
Yeah.
So, and then
fantastic.
And then this year in May, we're having an accreditation program, which goes for a whole weekend. So the National Parks Service will be running that. They'll have speakers and things to train our volunteers to work in the visitor centre.
Yep. Get organised before May. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be there. So thank you, Barry. Thank you very much for joining me this morning and having this conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
The producers and artists on this podcast acknowledge the traditional owners of the Binna Burra area and the Lamington National Park, the Yugambeh language group. We also thank Catherine Slingsby for the podcast theme music, an excerpt from her piece, Sweet Dream.